Okay, stand by.
Has joined the meeting.
Okay, we are now recording the Webex meeting.
Has joined the
We
meeting.
are live on Facebook at this time. Tim, the meeting is yours.
Thank you, Roger. Okay, we'll call this special meeting of the Board of Finance for Stonington to order. I will do a roll call of board members to make sure everyone is in attendance. Myself, Tim O'Brien, is online. Glenn Frischman, are you on the line?
I am on the line.
Mike Fauerbach.
Here.
Lynn Young.
Has left the meeting.
Deb Norman.
Yep, I'm here.
Bob Stachin.
Here. Yep, present.
And Dave Motherway.
Present.
And then for the minutes, do we need to
Has left
identify
the meeting.
everyone else who's in attendance? I don't think we really can. So we'll start off with the new business. The first item on business is approval of the tax collector's suspense listing. This happens every year. It's for delinquent taxes, and we just need to approve the list that Linda sends us that are ones that are doubtful that they will be collected. So can I get a motion to approve the listing for $14,177.19 for personal property in the aggregate?
So moved. Lynn Young.
Second. One Frischman.
Glenn with a second. And then we're going to do these all at once, guys. So
Henry,
you're going to
Gord.
make a motion at the end of
Has
this,
joined the
okay?
meeting.
Okay.
And then we'll do, we'll approve in the aggregate of $5,942.08 for the motor vehicle supplemental taxes. For the motor vehicle taxes, it's $27,100.02. And for real estate taxes, it is a total of $44,882.98.
Lynn Young, move to approve.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
If anyone on the Board of Finance is opposed, please identify yourself. Hearing none, the motion carries. That is done. The second item on the agenda is a bid waiver request to purchase fuel
Peter
contract for
Anderson.
Has joined the
2021 and
meeting.
2022 fiscal years. Jim, do you want to go straight into this, or do you want me to?
All right, can you still hear me?
Yep, hear you great.
All right. Yes, we just got these bids I got them about 15 minutes ago. So this is to because of the precipitous drop in fuel prices, we were going to try and lock in 2 years for 2021 fiscal and 21-22 fiscal. We got 2 quotes from the only 2 people whoever respond to our RFPs in the past, our bids, invitations to bid in the past. We had 2 respondents, East River and Dime Oil. And we have 3 commodities we want to purchase. The first is number 2 heating oil. Second is diesel oil fuel. And the second is unleaded gasoline. So the bids came in for the, oops, hold on a second. For 2021, East River was low bid on, or low quote for all 3 products at $1.13 for number 2 heating oil, $1.15 for diesel fuel, and $1.11 for unleaded gasoline. For 21-22, Dime Oil came in low for number 2 heating oil at $1.67. They came in low for diesel fuel at $1.63. And there was no bid for Dime had no bid for unleaded gasoline, so East River by default was low for gasoline for 21-22 at $1.11 per gallon. So we're requesting that you award East River all three commodities for 2021 fiscal year, and then a dime for number 2 heating oil for 21-22, dime for diesel fuel for 21-22, and dime for East River for unleaded gasoline for 21-22. And I misspoke earlier. The unleaded gasoline for 21-22 is $1.62, not $1.11. It's $1.11 for 2021.
How much quantity do we commit to this, Lynn?
Right now we're looking at 51,800 gallons for number 2 heating oil, 92,400 gallons of diesel fuel, and I'm sorry, that might be. Peter, do you know, or is it, the quote I got from Gary, is that quantities or is that dollars?
I don't know. That's a good question. Pete Anderson here. I don't know. I don't know is Gary on?
Let me shoot him an email, see if he responds.
Well, let me tell you what I'm really getting at. Where do we get the numbers from that we're committing to?
Oh, they come from the police department, the highway department, and school departments for their bus service.
So it's predicated on prior usage?
Yes. And there was no change in quantities requested for police or highway department, and I don't know if Gary did tweak his bedside or not.
And since we'd have to take delivery of it, presumably, what percentage of our actual usage do we commit to?
For police and highway, I don't know. I mean, I do know that the Board of Ed's not using a bunch of theirs, so Gary's plan is to, whatever they don't use this year, is to store and have that offset next year's.
Okay.
Jim, that 51,800 number for the number 2 heating oil, that's the gallons.
That's the gallons? Okay, so that was the gallons.
Because the $100,000 in the spreadsheet is the 51.8 times the $1.94.
Okay. I apologize. I just got these, like I said, I just got these a few minutes ago myself, so.
Okay, are we including the West Broad Street School in those numbers?
West Broad Street is on gas, I believe.
Okay.
I'm sure they're on gas.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
Jim, it's Mike. Does anything change in terms of the delivery terms? Are they consistent with what we've done in prior years, or do we have to take more of a quantity, in advance?
We're not taking quantities in advance. We're ordering the same quantities for police that we always do. Police and highway. Board of Ed, I don't know about. But we don't take it all up front. It's delivered as we use it. But we are committed to buying.
Okay, but so it's as needed on demand. Okay, great.
Right.
So I need a motion to approve a bid waiver to select East River to be the oil supply for 2020, 2021 based on their low bid. And then for Dime to be the supplier for the number 2 heating oil and diesel fuel for 2021, 2022, with East River being the supplier for unleaded for 2021, 2022.
Mike, so moved.
Second, Debbie.
Is there more discussion?
I just have a general question. Are we forward buying the gas? What else is powered by gas?
Could you repeat that question, Lynn?
What other town facilities are we powering by gas, like West Broad Street School? Anything else?
Is the high school, Peter, is the high school on gas and oil or just oil?
This is Pete. Can you hear me? This is Pete Anderson.
Yep, we got you, Pete.
Hello? Yeah, okay. Yes, we have dual fuel, so we burn mostly gas. We do keep a reserve tank of oil. We have about 15,000 gallons of reserve, just in case there's a catastrophic failure with the gas line, and the high school is considered a shelter. But we are 90% gas all the time.
Are we going after that too? To forward buy?
Can that be bid from Eversource?
I don't know. That hasn't been considered, to my knowledge.
Yeah, I don't think.
At this point.
I know, we've never done it. The only gas that the only gas that we actually bid is the propane for the Dean's Mill.
Okay, so when you say gas, I'm thinking underlying, natural gas. Is that what it is, or is propane?
Yeah, natural gas feeds the following schools. Natural gas feeds the Pawcatuck Middle School, currently district office. Natural gas feeds Stonington High School, and natural gas feeds West Vine Street School. Dean's Mill School is propane, which we bid out and go with lowest bidder on that. And the only other school that we have oil tanks at are pure 100% oil is Stonington Middle School. And then, like I said, Stonington High School has a 15,000 gallon tank that we, just only burn that throughout the year.
Okay. Well, given where the oil and gas market is, can we look into trying to forward buy the natural gas? I don't know what Eversource.
I don't know. We've never done it from Eversource before. We've only bought, like I said, forward bought propane.
Okay. Well, they may have some kind of a program because, as we all know, we know what prices look like, right? Can we check?
Yes, I will get back to you on that tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you.
And one thing I forgot to remind everyone is that if you are making a comment, please identify yourself first for the record so that when Jill is doing it, we can identify who said what. Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this bid waiver? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any Board of Finance members opposed, please identify yourself. Motion unanimously carries. All right.
Great, thank you.
Now we're on to budget deliberations. What I'd first like to do here, so the last thing we did for the budget was we received the public comments, which I read a couple weeks ago, and we have not met formally as a board since then. I know the Democrats have caucus together. And I would open up the floor to any Board of Finance member who would like to make any comment. First, identify yourself so that we can kind of do it one by one. Actually, I'll just go down the list and ask you if you'd like to make a comment. You don't need to, but we'll try and do this orderly. Glenn Frischman, would you like to make any comments before we get into deliberations?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. In light of the unprecedented situation, I think two things should be strongly considered. One, that all spending that can be frozen at current level immediately for both the Board of Ed and general government be done, and that we look at the next year a serious reduction in the Board of Ed's budget, because I think that the state is basically a trash heap financially, and I don't see anyone riding to the rescue, neither the feds nor the state to help Stonington. And they've already stated they're going to diminish our ECS over the next 10 years. There's a strong possibility that timetable could be accelerated, because I don't think we were going to start the coming fiscal year with $1 billion deficit. That was before Corona. So I think this is something that's worthy of consideration.
Thank you, Glenn. Mike Farbach, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, maybe just a quick comment, actually a quick thanks to all the members of the public who have submitted comments to us. It's tremendously helpful to get direct input and additional perspective. Everyone knows it is we're dealing with some difficult circumstances. It's challenging times, and we certainly are not going to be able to do everything that everyone is hoping for. But the direct perspective is always helpful and much appreciated.
Thanks, Mike. Lynn Young, would you like to say anything?
I don't have anything to say now. I'll wait for deliberations.
Deb Norman?
Sorry, nothing at this moment.
Thanks, Deb. Bob Stachin?
No, I'll just echo the comments that these are difficult times. I think it's also worth mentioning that I think both the town and the Board of Ed have been working collaboratively, and I think we're heading in the right direction from the discussions we have, and I look forward to further deliberations on the budget during these difficult times. I think Stonington is an example as far as people working together and collaborating through this, and I look forward to it continuing.
Thank you, Bob. And Dave Motherway, do you have any comment?
Yeah, the only comment I have is just to highlight that our major employers in the marketplace, a couple of hospitals, a couple of casinos, and NEB as far as volume employers. There are some others, but those organizations are being hit very, very hard. And that's going to impact us and our ability to financially support even the current budget, and to what extent we can, as Glenn mentioned, freeze spending at current levels. The specific example I'll highlight is, and I know this is going to be taken care of in deliberations, but a simple line item of $15,000 to close a bridge that's already closed. If there's any other things like that we can remove, we should do so. Whether they're approved or not, we should not be spending those types of money.
Thank you, Dave. And I will not make any comments at this time. We, as a result of the last budget hearing, or for the public comments, went back and asked and received from both the Board of Education and the town budget some recommended cuts or adjustments to the budget. So, Jim, if you're ready, we'll review the Board of Education ones first.
Okay, yep, I'm ready.
Okay. Now, members, what I would like to do, just so that we're clear, is I'm going to review them with Jim, put them all in. We'll do all of the Board of Education ones, then all of the town budget ones, and then we'll have review on that. If anyone has a problem with that, we can then go back and change that, but we can review all that as we go. But I think it's easier to put everything in and get an idea of our bottom line where we are. Does anyone want to do it in a different way, or is everyone okay with that?
Can we do town first?
Sure. Happy to do town first. Just change my paper order. All right. Jim, are you ready with the town?
I am.
Okay, so first item would be, I don't have line item numbers, Jim, I'm sorry, so we're going to have to kind of work together on this. But this will be from the first selectman's budget, is remove $990 from the Pawcatuck River Harbor Management clerical.
Okay, that's line 35.
Okay.
Done.
Okay. Then from the first selectman budget, we'll remove $1,400 from the facilities committee clerical support.
That's line 52. Done.
Okay. Then from the highway department operating, we remove $90,000 for 2 new laborers.
Okay, that number was, I actually made it 91,478 because that's the actual, not rounded off number of those 2 employees. That's
Okay.
line 3 of the highway department, regular salaries. That number is entered, that decrease, 91,000.
Okay. Now, is there additional savings that we'll get from that, Jim, due to salaries and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we'll save another, with that cut, we'd save, oh, where are my notes? 7,000 from in FICA, and About 4,500 in 401A contributions.
Okay.
So those would be in the administration budget. Take those out of there. So you want to move
Okay.
back there?
That'll be out of admin.
So move back there and get those in.
Yeah, why don't we go back to that and take care of those?
Okay. The 401A, that's line 46. That would have a decrease of 4574. And then the Social Security, which is line 47, would have a decrease of 6,998.
Okay. All right, so you've got both of those in as well?
Yep.
Okay. Then we're going to go back to Public Works. And we're going to go to lines 44 through 47, and we'll remove all the increases. That should be $78,400.
That's correct. Yep, yeah, line 44 through line 47. Yes, 78,400. I removed that.
Okay. Then we're going to go to the SIP for the town.
Well, we have other stuff in town, so why don't we stay there?
Okay.
Why don't we go to police? I think we have one more in.
Yep, we do for the police. We're going to take out the $50,000 for the officer who is deployed.
Right.
What line is that, Jim?
That is line 5. That's regular. Sorry, yes, salary of regular officers, $50,000.
Okay. And you've got that in?
I do.
Okay.
And it's worth noting there won't be a corresponding offset to pension contribution because while someone is on deployment, the town still has to contribute the town's contribution to the pension plan, and we have to contribute the individuals. We have to contribute on his behalf too, what he would have withheld. So for that reason, I'm not cutting any FICA or any pensions with this reduction.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, now let's go to SIP. And SIP for the town for the highway equipment. Thought I had it here, but I don't. The mower and the van. Take those down to $1.
We're taking that down to $1.
Yes.
Okay, we had 139,000 in there.
Yeah, there was additional equipment that was in there, right?
Right. So if you take out,
Sorry, just take those two items out.
right, so that gets us down to
It should be about 82,000.
82,000 is the cut, and that'll leave us with 57,000.
57. Okay. I didn't have my paperwork moving as quick as you did. So okay, so you've got the 82,000 out.
It's Jill Senior. Can we mention the line items?
I'm sorry, that was
forward?
Yes, I'm sorry, that was line 24.
I was just about to ask that, Jill, for the line for that one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's line 24, the SIP for the town. We're going to remove $82,000.
Okay, that's done.
Okay. And then we have in the SIP, we have line 39, the Pawcatuck Pump House. We're going to take that down to $1.
Down to $1. Okay, done.
All right. Then
There's the one more cut, I guess it was the one they were talking about, the Stonington Bridge where Dave mentioned earlier.
yes.
We'll take that down to $1.
After discussions and hearing from the chief over there that they would like some more time to see what to do with that bridge, I would like to take that line item down to $1. We will not close that bridge. We will try and explore different avenues with everyone over there to see if there's anything we can do there. So for right now, take that line. And I don't have the line in front of me for that, Jim.
It's 36.
Okay, so take line 36 down to $1, please.
Okay, I'm all set. Done.
Okay, perfect. Working on 12 pieces of paper here, so I apologize. All right, so that's that number. Okay. Then for the SIP for the tennis courts, can you add back in 65,000 for the town for the tennis courts, please? I think that's 194.
It's, no, line 77.
Line 77. Okay. Yep. Sorry. I'm in the wrong section. All right.
Yep. Tim, it's Lynn. What's the rationale for that?
Because we know the overall cost is going to be $600,000, and trying to make that up next year is going to be impossible. And we know we got to do that.
The budget that I'm looking at, which is the last one that was sent out, says we've got 150 in there. So so we're adding 65 to that?
We're adding 65 to that 150 is the proposal. Now we can do something different, but the highway department and the police department and that found more monies to come out. So the hope was to put this in, and I say it's a hope. These are the suggestions from Danielle. We can deliberate as much as we want.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we gotta get the numbers right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So that was 65,000. So that will go up from the 150 to 115,000.
215,000.
215. Thank you. Thank you. And that was line 77. 77. Okay. And do you want to just stay in SIP here, Jim?
Yep. So we'll go up to police.
Yep. Let's go up to the police. Please. And the animal control vehicle, can we put in 35,000 for that?
That's line 17.
Line 17 will add in 35,000. Line 17.
It's Lynn again. Question. Is that, they originally requested 50. Is it 35 because why?
The chief believed they have 15,000 to offset the total 50, so they think they only need 35.
From the dog fund, the town dog fund.
Dog fund, yeah. Yep.
So the expectation is if we give the 35, we'll get the new truck.
Correct. That is the expectation based on their input. Okay. Jim, do you want to bounce back to operating?
Yep. So I guess we're going to
Human Services.
Human Services. Yes. Yep.
Okay. I gotta get myself to the right place. Here we are. Okay. So Human Services General Assistance. What line is that, Jim? Do you have that?
Line 17.
Line 17. Can you increase that by $20,000, please?
Got it. All set.
Sorry, question, Lynn again. What is general assistance? What does that mean?
That is general assistance that they provide to taxpayers or townspeople who are struggling.
People who might need to make a car payment or rent payment after they lost their job or something like that. So it's, I guess the anticipation is that with COVID-19 and everyone losing their jobs, there's going to be an increased need for that.
Is that enough?
I would doubt it, but I don't know any more than that. Details about it than that. I don't know if Leanne.
Mr. Chairman, does this also, does food assistance come out of that line 17?
Hang on 1 second. Glenn has a question, please. Glenn, go ahead.
Does food assistance come out of line 17? If someone is, in desperate need of providing food for their family, is that line where that comes from?
Yes, this is Leanne Theodore, and I'd like to just make some comments on the general assistance line. That line covers anything from immediate basic needs, such as food. It covers energy expenses, such as electric and deliverable heating, fuel. It covers mortgage, rent, medical needs, pretty much anything you can think of that may be supportive service for a resident going through a crisis. We really cover a wide variety of needs. As of right now, I just ran some numbers this morning to see where we were at in comparison to last year. And the contacts and services we provided through the Social Services Division has gone from 888 from March 1st to April 29th last year to 1,255 March 1st to April 29th this year. We've gone from serving 265 households to 487 for the same time period. So there's definitely been an uptick in residents we've been serving. At this time, we've been partnering very closely with the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center. They have access to United Way COVID-specific assistance funds, but we have been relying on our nonprofit partners as we move forward with financial assistance. That being said, we believe that we will not see an increased demand in actual financial assistance until probably mid to late summer, when some of the mortgage deferment programs and other things might be coming to a head for families that are still potentially out of work. So for right now, we've been at $30,000 for that general assistance line for many, many years. At this point, it would probably be easier to add more in there now and for us to give it back than coming to you for an appropriation. So we would appreciate the consideration of any increase at this time. Thank you.
Leanne, it's Lynn. Is that enough?
At this time, Lynn, I think with relying on the collaboration with our nonprofits who also have financial assistance programs that they can tap into for residents, I think bringing that up 20,000 to 50,000 total, I would say it's a very safe start. Again, we rely very heavily on our nonprofit partners in the community as well, including PVCCA and some of the regional community action agencies. So I would say I would feel comfortable with that number right now.
Okay. Do we use the 30K every year?
Yes, we do. Conservatively, we very conservatively use that money every year, and the only way that we provide financial assistance is if our residents can prove self-sufficiency in upcoming months. So we're in a little bit of a unique situation now where people might be experiencing elongated unemployment periods, and we're thinking outside of the box a little bit and how to be as conservative with this money as possible, but have the biggest impact on the community.
Okay. I'm just worried it's not enough. Okay.
I think for right now, I think for what we're looking at over the past 2 months, we're okay. And really, you know, the 30,000, we've been able to stretch that, even keeping in mind that fair market rent in Stonington, as we always go back to, is $1,100, $1,100 to $1,200 for a 2-bedroom. So depending on the request for rental assistance, depending on how long evictions are put on stay for through the court, we're going to be creative in working with our partners and try and, you know, stretch that out the best we can. And if we can't, you know, I will keep you updated on a monthly basis with what we're spending and what the numbers look like and what the needs are that are coming in.
Yeah, I'd like to know that as you do it, because you know, these 3-month deferral programs, they're not going to persist indefinitely. They can't, or else you're going to have landlords going bankrupt. Right. So get the expiration of those 3 months, for example, when the taxes will be due from deferments and things of that nature, that's when we're going to know the answer to this, not now.
Right.
So I hope everybody realizes that, because my guess is you're going to be coming back to us in possibly a big way.
I think this is, you know, almost 100% increase. I think it's a responsible thing to start planning for, and then we'll keep monitoring for now. I think it's almost impossible to factor how high or low that number is going to be.
No, I agree, but we need to be mindful of the fact that we may have a big number in that bucket before it's all said and done.
Yep.
Well,
Mike, did you have a question or comment there?
Yeah, well, right. I think, you know, it's also, I mean, obviously we want to do as much as we can to help citizens across the town, but there's also a limit to what the town can do as well. So it's finding that right balance. But again, you know, let's have that dialogue with Leanne if we need to down the road versus trying to figure it all out right now.
Okay. And then the First Select Woman had one other addition to put in. Jim, was under the Human Services Outside Agencies, line 64. Would you like to bring the Davis Homestead up to $3,000 for a match?
All right, I got that. Add back in.
Okay. And those are the numbers I was given by the First Select Woman.
I have a, Mr. Chairman, Glenn Frischman, I have a question. That's a private entity. And I have some issues giving funds to a private concern. We took that out for a reason.
Deb Norman, are we sure it's a private? Are you sure about that, Glenn?
It's a private dwelling. That's been in that family for generations. It's not a town-owned property.
Okay, I didn't know if it was a 501c3 or what it was.
Do you guys want me to, this is Danielle, they are a nonprofit. They're, I think, waiting on us having a meeting to get their official filing status changed, but they are a nonprofit. They're a 501c3.
Thank you.
Danielle, it's Lynn. Why is it critical we put that in this year? Is it doing something specific like saving a roof so the building doesn't fall down, or what? Because if it's not doing something highly specific, I'm not thrilled with that.
I think for me personally, it just touched the letter they sent where they had already, they thought they had the $5,000 that they requested, had lined up a dollar for dollar match from a private donor. So it felt like by giving them nothing, we're setting back their efforts, at least significantly. And if we could give $3,000 and they at least then have $6,000 to work with, it seemed like a small thing to do for a historical and potential draw of small but potential people to come in and see this historic home and the story of the former slave and everything that he presented to us. So yeah, that was just kind of my thinking for the $3,000.
Well, I remember the guy who came to make the pitch. He was talking about a pretty immediate need to deal with the roof. So hopefully they didn't have much of a sort of plan with any of it. So hopefully it's money well spent.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions on the either that line specifically or any of the other adjustments that Danielle asked us to make?
Hi, this is Bob Stachin. I'm a little unclear going back to the discussion regarding the general assistance. I know Leanne talked about having an additional 20,000. Is that also something that Danielle is recommending?
Yes, so Danielle gave me these list of cuts or changes that she made in concert with the department heads and all of them. So they're all aware of what and had, except for this one, actually, Danielle had originally put a smaller number in and we agreed, or I agreed that it should go higher because I think there's a bigger need that's coming in the not too distant future.
So the recommendation is going from 30 to 50?
The recommendation is to go from 30 to 50. That is correct, Bob.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other comments on side as of now?
This is David Motherway, an educational point for me, if I could. With that 20,000, bringing it to 50,000, which is, I think, as you said, the right thing to do. In the event that we need more, I'm just curious what the process is, just so I understand it.
So the process would be, it depends on how much money we have. If there's other monies available, we could do a line item transfer where we're not going to spend money on a certain place within the budget, but could reallocate it over to this. We could do a line item transfer, or we do have an ability up to a certain percentage of the overall budget to use the undesignated fund balance if we need to, or there's, I think in this case, Leanne and their group are extremely diligent about working with other partners to try and help out people in the best way possible. So they additionally try and stretch that as far as they can, as you've heard Leanne mention. So there are a couple avenues that we do have, and what we would have to do really depends on the situation the town's in at that time. I would not say we're locked into anything, but there are different methods we could use to move funds or allocate different funds.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hearing no other questions, the Board of Ed, Alexa passed on to me.
Whoa, hold on.
Go ahead, Lynn.
What's the net change from all this, Jim?
Lynn, how do you want that expressed? Dollars?
Dollars and mill rate. You've got an interactive spreadsheet, right, Jim?
Yeah. Let me think about this for a second.
The mill rate would be based upon the education budget as well.
Well, I know. I just want to see what room we've got.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good. I appreciate you asking that question. I'm just wondering
Wait a minute for a second.
what we derive from that mill rate until we decide on the budget. Unless I'm missing something. Lynn.
So what I had Jim do, so this is why it's a little bit challenging, is I went over the cuts to make sure ahead of time that were recommended by the first selectwoman and the Board of Education chair, and we pre-populated so that I knew where we were at and sure that we had the right line items, because being virtual, I was a little nervous. So he'd have to back out the education cuts.
Don't do that, Jim. Don't muck that up. But if you can more easily just tell me what the net change was for the town side, if that's
the town reduced their overall budget spend between SIP and operating by $204,790.
Actually, with the Social Security, and it was
that went up
about 206, 268. About $271,000. Excuse me, about that number's. Hold on a second.
That number's not right.
Nope.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
217,000.
217. Okay. All right. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. I got the same. Well, just under 217, but yeah.
Yeah. Rounding.
That's year over year. So that's.
That is from the budget that we had presented to the public. Okay. That is the decrease in that budget that we're looking at. So it was not a year over year comparison.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. And then I will go through the Board of Education cuts that they did. Jim, I'm going to you also to start with help with the line item. They will decrease to a 0% budget change year over year. So can you change their budget to $37,901,102?
$37,901, $1,100.
100. Sorry.
Yep.
There's a difference in $37,901,101.
Correct. That's flat funded from prior year.
Tim, it's Mike. Are we going to talk about the ECS adjustment as well now, or handle that later?
What I want to do first, Mike, is go through the all of the cuts and see where we are that the Board of Ed had done, then see where we are with mill rate and that, and then start some other discussions, if that's okay.
Yep, fine.
So, Jim, you've got the operating budget flat funded for next year?
Yes.
Okay. Then we go down to in their SIP. Okay. Now this is all going to be Board of Ed SIP from this point on. Okay. Can we go to line 158 and take the security cameras? Take that down to $1.
Okay, done.
And then can you go to line 181, floor repair? That was $20,000. Can you bring it to $1?
Done.
Okay, then can you go to line 191, the gym floor? That was $45,000. Can you bring that down to $1?
Sarah, you want to put something back on she's her?
Done.
And for line 195, the Stonington Middle School science rooms were $20,000. Can you bring that down to $1?
Done.
And then for everyone for the Board of Ed and Alexa who's on, we looked at line 188, the kitchen equipment repair, and remembered that you're having to transport warm food from one school to another. We would recommend we leave that in at this current time because we think it's important to get warm food and get that kitchen repaired. So we're gonna leave that in the budget for now at line 188. And we understand the rest of these in Alexa's narrative. They were all very important things that need to get done if we can find monies, but they also know that we have a very challenging situation coming up.
So that's a total of $996,000 to Board of Ed SIP.
134,996, Jim?
Correct.
So then, Jim, can you update where we are at for budget year over year? Because that's all the cuts that I have from either the town or the Board of Ed at this time. And then we'll get an update of where we're at, and then we'll move from there.
Year over year numbers or mill rate?
All of that. Mill rate and tax rate is probably the most important thing people are looking at.
Okay. Right now we're at a 0.02 increase in the mill.
0.02? I thought it was a decrease, Jim.
That would have that factored in the 115,000 cut to EC.
Okay, I got you. Okay, yep. So right now we're 0.02 increase in the mill. Thank you.
23.38.
23.38. Okay.
Jim, it's Lynn. Can you tell me how much the tax portion for revenues are decreased from last year, where we are now?
Taxes to be raised are actually increased by $697,000.
I'm sorry, by how much?
697,000.
Yeah. But we've cut the actual expenditures in the budget, have we not?
Yes, but our other revenues went down.
Well,
So
I understand.
Yep.
I understand. But how much have we cut the budget in dollar numbers?
versus prior year, it's down by $2,044,525.
Can you say that number again, please, Jim?
The decrease, year-over-year decrease as of right now is minus $2,044,525.
And again, just to clarify, that's year over year total budget.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, Jim, can you just rattle off now the new totals, general government, education, debt service, and capital?
Yes, general government, general operations, general government, yes, would be $23,125,749.
Okay.
Education would be $37,901,100. Debt service would be $8,082,815. Capital improvements would be $2,494,631.
The money that we've reduced the budget by is because we just took it really out of SIP.
Yeah, SIP was 4.9 million last year. And debt's down by 900,000 as well.
Service number again?
Debt service is $8,082,815.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we had a little bit of a debt roll off this year, right?
Yeah, it decreased by $850,000.
Okay. And when do we expect whatever the final reimbursement is from the state, if they give it to us and don't renege on it, for the school building?
Oh, it's that's a year or two out.
And just
that's optimistically speaking, I would say.
yeah, okay, I agree with that. But how much would it be?
I think I don't have those numbers in front of me. I think we're sitting on a possible $2.2 $1.6 million receivable. But that's subject to, things being, expenditures being disallowed, and there's a lot of that goes into that number.
Well, yeah, including a bankrupt state. Okay.
Jim, can you repeat? Sorry, it's Mike. Can you repeat the timing on that again? What's the process there for that ECS reimbursement?
School. We're talking about school bonding, right?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Mike, that was for the bonding for the school renovations, not for
Sorry.
ECS.
About ECS, yeah, all right. That's
Sorry,
what I'm
Mike, I
confused.
was looking for a windfall. Okay.
You're at a minimum, probably closer to 2 or 3.
And a discount from there, no less, right?
Put it this way, we closed out the high school last year.
So, Jim, can I ask the same question then on ECS, what the timing is on that reimbursement typically?
Oh, we get that quarterly.
Okay, so
I think we get first 2 in quarterly, then we just actually got our last 2 quarters for this current fiscal year. Well, it came in thirds actually, so our last payment came yesterday, I believe.
okay, all right. So if something going awry there, we'll know it within a quarter or so.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Jim, this is David. Could I ask you to read off lines 154, 155, and 156, please, on the SIP?
The SIP? Okay. Okay, could you give me those line numbers again, Dave?
154,
154.
156.
154 is at 410,000. 155 is at $1. 156 is at 72,000. Are there more?
No, that's it. Thank you. And our current SIP is total of $2 million.
$2,494,631.
So a sixth of it is line 154, and that runs straight across. It was 61,000 the previous year, and now it's going to be 410,000, and it then expected to run at 410,000 based on what the forms are for the foreseeable future. We had initially talked about receiving an inventory of equipment to understand what is aging out, what is needed, and then how long we're going to have what we have before we have to replace it. And I would like to, because it's such a large number on this SIP, understand that given our current situation, and make sure that we have a very clear understanding of where we're going to put 1/6 of our SIP on buying new technology. If that's something that's possible.
I can't speak to that, David. That would be a question to direct it to somebody.
No, I was sending it to the group and as a whole, not just you. Thank you.
Jim, was this the one that there was an offset in?
Yes, the 410 will be offset by $70,000 of E-rate grant coming in. You see that on line 199 of the SIP budget. It's under state and federal grants. It's neither. It's actually a utility grant, I believe. But
my recollection is that's a scenario where we spend the money at 410, and then the Board of Education gets the 70,000 back.
Correct. It'll come to the town, but
does it come to the town or does it go to the Board of Education?
it comes to the town, and it would go into the SIP fund to fund that 410 expenditure.
Okay.
Jim, what does E-rate mean?
I don't know, but it's I don't know if it's efficiency or something. It's through the Eversource or utility. I don't know if it's based on energy savings or if it's just a give back to technologies to schools. I don't know those Chris or Gary, do you know more about it? Or Chris Wilson, is he on?
Chris was on.
Hey, can you hear me?
Now I can.
Hey, the E-rate is part of the FCC funding program that provides a discount based on free and reduced lunch numbers for schools. So that's a projected reimbursement that we'll be receiving.
And it's from the feds, not the state?
Correct.
Okay.
I knew less about it than I thought.
Thank you.
All right, so at current, we're at a 0.02 mil increase. Is there further discussion? I'll open it up.
And I should know that I asked here, but this is David. What is the dollar value associated with the 0.02 to get it to zero? I'm just curious.
That would be
$115,000.
yes, 115,000. Yep.
This is Mike, which coincidentally isn't that the ECS adjustment
Yes,
year
it
over
is.
year? So can we maybe put that on the table for discussion as to whether we would consider making that adjustment as well?
Yeah, I would like to make that adjustment as well, and to put, as far as ECS goes, to put something else on the table, which is that the town not be liable for the reductions, as not liable, but in the past we have made line items to protect against that, and I would like to make it clear for myself anyway that I think if the ECS grants go away, then the Board of Education is going to have to figure out what to do.
Actually, can I make a correction? That 115 reduction would make it actually a 0.02 decrease in the mill rate to get it to zero.
So we're at zero without that.
No, we're at zero with about a 50,000 reduction. It'd be at zero, roughly.
Okay.
Lynn, can I ask you a question? You mentioned that we had a line item to take into consideration if the ECS didn't come through, but I don't believe that's is it accurate to say that's not in this budget?
Yeah, in the past, when the noise out of Hartford, before the market boomed and they started collecting capital gains taxes again, they were making noise about doing two things. One was looking at quote unquote rich towns, where somehow they considered us one of those, and cutting out the ECS much more aggressively than the 10-year schedule that has recently come out of Lamont's office. And there was also noise that was more quickly dispensed with of pushing teacher pensions onto towns.
Right, but so at that point there was a line item in the budget to contemplate that?
Let me try and go through it. Bob, what we did is we took some undesignated fund balance when our fund balance level was much higher, and we placeholdered it in the finance department so that if the ECS did not come in, we were able to help mitigate to a certain level that lack of funding. But it was not going to be able to be continued because we didn't have enough year over year in the fund balance. When that didn't happen, when the ECS got restored, we took that money and returned it back to the undesignated fund balance. We don't really, in my opinion, have that luxury in these years where we can take out of the fund balance because we spent it down in the prior years and because it's there for emergencies, which we are in the middle of, that we haven't really seen the full financial impact of.
Was that designation actually part of the budget though? Or
Yes,
is that
it was.
That's part of the budget to designate those funds?
We put it in we put it in the finance department with a corresponding offset at the time, and it was earmarked specifically for that. It could not be used for anything else.
But it wasn't taxed, Bob, because we basically encumbered savings that we had.
Right, and so we just put them on notice that we were encumbering that, but it wasn't actually part of the.
It did not affect the mill rate or the tax rate at all because we encumbered them and designated them all at the same time. So it was just an offset, really.
So Lynn, your point is that we're just articulate. The line item comment kind of threw me on that and made me feel like I didn't understand. But your point basically is that we're not committing to that reserving those funds as we had done in the past.
No, we're not doing that. And, you know, when you look at the level funding formula or the minimum budget requirement, there are a couple of escape hatches out of that. And one of them is you can reduce it by the amount of the ECS funding. And so what I'm saying here is, should that occur because the state finds itself unable to make those payments, which, as Mike points out, should become apparent at least by the second quarter. What I'm saying is the town can't make that up in this budget year. So the Board of Ed people who are listening should make their own assessment of what the state's ability to pay that will be, and both budget accordingly and save as much money as possible out of this year, because we can set that into a different line item to help you next year should that occur. Help them next year should that occur.
Okay, thank you.
Mike again. Tim, can I just check something with Jim? So Jim, are you holding the use of fund balance at 400,000 still?
I am.
Okay. So that's also potentially an adjustment factor, I guess, if we're targeting flat, one way or the other, potentially, if we took the full ECS adjustment, sounds like we would go negative. You potentially could reduce the use of fund balance from 400 to 350 or 325 and probably still be at a flat mill rate, I would assume.
Well, to get to a flat mill rate now, we're still at plus 0.02. To get to a flat mill rate, we need to cut another $59,278 where we stand right now.
I think I would like to support Member Young. This is Glenn Frischman. Member Young's recommendation that we take that 115 reduction in ECS.
But I've got some elaborations to make on that, because one thing we haven't talked about is I think I've been told that Alexa can chime in here, or Van, that Board of Ed thinks that they can find $350,000 out of this year's budget to return.
This is Alexa.
I'd certainly like to hear that.
Go ahead, Alexa.
This is Alexa. We can guarantee returning $350,000 this year.
Okay. Is Gary Shuttle here?
I haven't heard him come on the line.
Okay. If you had to be, if you had to guess at what the real number will turn out to be on, sort of not the max, not the minimum, but a midpoint, what would you guess it could be?
Lynn, I don't know that we can do that yet. We're still in negotiations with First Student and some of these finalized costs, which is why we said we can definitely 100% guarantee $350,000, and we're looking at giving back more. Anything we can give back, we are looking at giving back. But I don't want to give you a false number, especially during these serious times.
Okay. So now, if that 350 comes back to us, it's basically the 400 out of the undesignated that we're taking, right? Which gives us back kind of a cash cushion, right? Our point is not to take it away from Board of Ed, but our one thing we do have to guard against here is that, we have a cash flow problem significant enough,
right,
or we discover we do, that we're issuing IOUs for paychecks, right? We can't have that. So we don't have a whole ton of undesignated fund balance to get to this kind of a mill rate. We were taking 400, but that's basically a wash because we're going to put it back in if we get that back. So the next thing I would like to posit for people to consider, and one, I hope that number grows. And again, the intention is not to take it away, it's to offset some sort of catastrophic budget adjustments coming out of Hartford next year, or the year after, for that matter. But the next thing I would like to posit is whether or not it makes sense to take out more money out of the operating budget, put it into a line for sake of argument at the moment called COVID-19 or whatever else, just in case, and have it designated if for Board of Ed that, we can deal with if we need to deal with it, because it's not even clear to me school's going to be open for the full number of months next year. And I would like to have more of a cash flow cushion for the first quarter of the fiscal year where we have expenses to pay but may not have revenue coming in.
Lynn, can you the comment about it being a wash, if they gave us $350,000, you're saying that's a wash?
I don't mean a wash. What it is, if they put back from this fiscal,
yeah,
$350,000, okay, and we're taking for the next fiscal 400 out of the undesignated surplus, that's a wash, basically.
But that 400 we're taking under the undesignated surplus this year is calculated into this 0.02 increase, correct?
Yeah, but we're talking about two different things. We're talking about cash flow now. So, and cash flow, if we have 2 months, designated operating funds, right, that we always try to keep. Then we have some undesignated surplus above and beyond that. What I'm trying to say is this, this is a year where the 2 months operating, this is what it's intended to be for, a catastrophe and a disaster. And this year may turn out to be that. We don't know because we're still trying to catch a falling knife here at the time we have to declare mill rates. What I'm trying to say is if the Board of Ed gives us back 350, 400, 500, whatever they give us back this year goes back into the undesignated fund balance and gives us a cash flow cushion to pay the bills for the first quarter.
But and that undesignated fund balance right now is at what amount?
Jim would have to tell us that.
It's at 16, as of June 30, 2019, it was at 16,500,000.
Yeah, but how much of that's unencumbered by the 2 months?
Maybe about 12 million.
I never know whether to look forward or in the current fiscal for that one.
Well, if you look, probably about 12 million is unencumbered.
Okay.
So that somewhat addresses the cash flow issue, Lynn, correct?
Well, kind of, except that the cash flow is lumpy, and a lot of times your obligations, and I think it has been explained to me that if we get a lot of tax deferrals and a lot of non-tax payments, right, let's just say we get the deferrals, a ton of deferrals, because we've put that program in place, so we don't get the receipts, but we also get just tax defaults from hotels and things of that nature. We could really, really have trouble paying our bills.
Right. I agree, and I appreciate the kind of walking through the mental gymnastics on it. Let me throw out one thought though, because I think we also, I don't want to diminish the fact that the Board of Ed is coming back with this 350. I think it's a good gesture, and I think we need to note that and appreciate the flexibility on that. I just wonder, I know we're talking about getting to a zero mill rate increase, and we're certainly reducing the budget by 2.4 million based on that just where they're guaranteeing 350,000 is going to come back into the cash flow. Do you think it'd be reasonable to take the 59, because I guess 59,278 is the difference, as Jim said, rather than taking the full 115 out of their budget, taking the 59,278 out and bringing us to a zero increase in the mill rate. We don't get the 0.02 decrease, but I think it's that's sort of a happy medium.
Well, I'm not trying to manage so much to the mill rate as I'm trying to manage to the circumstances we could find ourselves in next year. Because what I'm trying to do, which may seem kind of counterintuitive, is to be able to make a line item and put whatever money the Board of Ed cannot spend this year into it to mitigate what might happen to them next year. That's what I'm trying to do.
But again, the line item, the line item is not a line item in the budget.
We can add one.
Yeah, we could add it right now.
The Board of Finance creates the lines right now. This is when we do it.
Right, but so you're saying we would create a line item to account for the 350 that's coming in?
Or anything else?
No. Go ahead, Tim.
So what Lynn is suggesting is creating a line item, dropping, and it's basically, it's an offset, and it's think of it this way, as an insurance offset. If you read the Day today and you look at what East Lyme is doing, and they went back and reopened their budget books before they sent it back to the Board of Finance, their first selectman is already saying that they're nervous about the ECS coming in. I've been very nervous about the ECS coming in all along, and I still am nervous about the ECS coming in, and I'm very nervous about our cash flow position. What Lynn is suggesting is to create to move some number of funds into a line item which we create, and should everything proceed as it normally does and is expected to, with rosy life returning, then that line gets returned directly. If things happen that the hotels aren't paying their bills, that the economy doesn't start back up, that line provides an insurance that we can use expressly for education that would potentially take an ECS hit or some other things there that would then create us a little bit of flexibility, but it's almost an insurance for them that it starts holding reserve.
Where do the funds come for that new line item?
Well, they're going to be funded by whatever that line item. They're basically, we're going to pick a number, and they're going to be funded by the Board of Ed's return. So they should be thinking of this as being highly incentivized to return as much as possible, because this way, if the $1 million of ECS funds that they get next year doesn't materialize, or the 900 or whatever the amount is, we can help them, because otherwise we cannot.
So, but Mike, yes, I'm still, I think maybe I'm same question Bob is, which is, all right, so we create a new line item, 350,000. That would imply, if there's no other changes anywhere, that implies that the tax rate's going up. The mill rate's going to go up because we've just added another 350,000 in expenses. So is there a proposed offset in the next fiscal year in the budget?
That's where I'm going next. So the proposed offset to me is whatever bucket we make in there is another cut to the operating fund. That's the offset. So they get it for their operating funds, but we need to offset it for this year. It's basically so we can pay teachers without IOUs and other town employees if we wind up in that kind of a jam, and it is possible.
But Lynn, you're asking them to reduce their budget, their operating budget, by 350,000 and create this line item that is going to account for the money they're going to pay back.
And then it's
that seems from a cash flow planning predictability, that's somewhat counterintuitive.
That's what I started off by saying. But again, all this is it's mental gymnastics for cash flow. Because otherwise, if that ECS funding doesn't come through, if it doesn't, okay, then they're looking at $1 million shortfall. I'm trying to accomplish two things here, which is to focus people on how bad things really are, okay, and they're not reflected in this budget. They are going to be reflected in the following year's budget. That's just the way this stuff works. And secondly, I am trying to focus people on counting staples to save as much money as can be saved this year.
But I mean, I assume, Alexa, if you're saying you can guarantee the 350,000, then you wouldn't have any to be honest, I'm not sure I see the benefit of this, but Alexa, I'm assuming you would have any, I mean, since and you're saying we can definitely do the 350, you wouldn't have any objection to that then, correct?
Can I say something? This is Jim Sullivan chiming in. You can't cut the education any more than $115,000.
Right. Okay.
I'm not worried about the state and the level funding, so I'm starting off from that premise.
Okay.
If they don't give us what I'm doing is worried about, they don't give us the ECS. They don't give us the ECS, you can cut the budget, right? But we would have the opportunity to give some of that back from what we can and should be saving from this year. That's all. That's all this is. And the level funding thing, I'm not terribly concerned about for that amount of money because we can turn around and take it out of the excess fund balance we have anyway if it doesn't work out.
Are you so by making this suggestion, are you writing off the $1 million of the ECS funding? Are you basically just saying we're not going to budget for it even?
We're not doing the budgeting for that. This is my point. Okay, all we control is one number. All right.
But if we followed your procedure, because I'd like to follow your procedures because they always make sense. But if we follow your procedures, then we're just, right out of the box, we're not going to get that because we're going to be going below that floor. We're going to be going over that 150 as far as dropping their budget. We're not going to get the $1 million in the ECS funding. We're just assuming the state's going to be in a horrible case. And so we're budgeting that it's just not going to happen. So all that unpredictability goes away. But is that your proposal that we just at this point write off any possibility of ECS funding?
No, because I'm not talking about cutting $1 million. I'm talking about trying
But
any potential that may occur, and it may not occur in the first quarter.
But if we drop the 350, if we take 350 out of their budget, then we're going to lose the $1 million ECS funding. Isn't that accurate, or am I missing?
No.
Well, I think, Bob, you're saying that we're giving the state some ammunition to potentially, at that point in time, we're not following the rules, and we're putting our funding at risk if we don't follow the rules. So yeah,
they'll come for us and ask us for it. This is just, look, everybody's going to have to decide for themselves what their risk tolerance is. My risk tolerance for IOUs is not very high. My risk tolerance for a minor amount of adjustment to a huge school budget relative to the entire town's budget is much higher. And it's basically for their benefit, because I'm going to go out and say now that if the ECS grant is cut by the entire amount or a large portion of it, either this year or year two, I'm not going to vote for the town to make it up. They're going to have to make it up. So this is to help smooth cash flow. That's all this is.
And let me just clear one thing up here, because this is Tim. Okay. We have in the past heard that Hartford was going to change the ECS number that Stonington got. The problem is we don't know that number until well after we have to set a budget. So they had some much different numbers that came around. So we budgeted around losing significantly more than we did. And that was perfectly acceptable in the budgeting process. We don't put anything at jeopardy and anything like that. When the ECS number was finalized, we then put back into the budget what was required to be compliant with that. So there's nothing that we're talking about here that would jeopardize any funding, because nobody knows what the state is going to do with the ECS and with the shortfalls they've got right now. So it's trying to, as Lynn says, it's looking at risk and picking where the risk is that we want to account for and budget around, and where the risk is mitigated more and we're okay with it.
Mr. Chairman, that makes excellent sense.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Well, but Tim, can I just check though? I know, last year, if I'm remembering correctly, there was a lot of the issue was just the state didn't know what it's doing with its budget. We were all the towns were having to make assumptions, et cetera. But at some point in time, the first selectman gets a letter saying, here's the town's number. And I think last year when we were working through this process, we just didn't have that. We had no choice but to make some assumptions. I guess I want to just check, is that truly the case? I mean, it sounds like we've got a number. I mean, we're talking about a 115 reduction, as if someone has informed Danielle or the state has informed Danielle that that's the case. So
that was the number based on the ECS reduction formula that they made last year. The House has not been in chambers. They have not been doing anything, so we have not heard anything about budget for this year coming up because they haven't been around to do anything. They've been dealing with COVID-19. So we have zero information whether that 115 is an accurate number or it's going to be more than that. That will be,
the 115
that will be
was the number
removed from
stated
ECS.
in the plan issued last year. So we know we're going to get 115. It could be double, triple, quadruple. Because we were initially, they wanted to give Stonington 0.
Right. So I think it's more likely than not, given the drivers of the state budget, if you study them, and I mean, look, the state was functionally bankrupt before Corona. It's not in great shape now. And they're already talking about how many billions in the hole they're going to be. And there's a limit to what they're going to be able to do for taxes because it's going to take a while for employment to recover. And it's probably not going to recover to, pre-Corona levels and so on. You're also going to have, when all of this gets sorted out, you're not going to have your capital gains receipts that you're used to. And a lot of stuff is going to happen. I mean, I guess when it's all over, you might have more estate taxes, which is a terrible thing, but there it is. So, it's if you look at the risk parameters here or the risk likelihood, it's more likely than not we're going to get cut sharply. So, and that's not great because the town can't make it up. So I'm trying to incentivize them to save as much this year so we can give it to them next year. But we still have to cut next year in order to, to give it to them because we don't, we're not trying to increase taxes this year. It's a shell game is all it is. And it's an attempt to smooth cash flow. That's really all it is.
Yeah, no, understood. So can I just, Mike, again, can I just check with Danielle or Jim, just again, I'm still a little fuzzy on how at one point in time in this process, we knew or made an assumption that the reduction would be $115,000 less for the next fiscal year on the ECS versus the current fiscal year. Was that literally just Jim, you making an assumption, or Gary, or where did that come from?
That was the governor's proposed budget, but that was back in February.
All right, so there was a proposed budget then at some point, and
that 115 follows the formula of over the 7 years, them dropping us from 1 point whatever million in ECS down to 250,000. So
and was that math we are on our own, or was there truly a letter?
No, that was from the governor's office, from the last governor.
So they're going down to 0 over a 10-year period, Mike. That was before they were circling the drain.
Yeah.
Right. We can have other things hit too. I mean, they can, if it gets bad enough, and if they, for example, if, Congress and McConnell's, trial balloon there fall apart and they can't go, bankrupt and whatnot, and they can't tax their way out of this, they might push pensions on us, all kinds of things. We don't know. We're catching a falling knife. And this is, on a relative basis, a relatively little amount, but it's good for everybody to really count the pennies because they're coming back to you if you need them.
But it's fair right now to say the estimate, based on the state budget, the estimated payment to Stonington is $1.073 million for next fiscal year. I mean, that's what I mean, and I understand that things are going to change, but as far as again putting that's the current number that is budgeted under the approved state budget is the 1.073, correct?
Yeah, which is declining, so it's got 9 years to decline to 0 anyway.
Right, but we're talking about 2021. So
we're talking about 2021.
Right. So in 2021, the budget is for 1.073. But again, I think, Tim, you made an excellent point that, what we're deciding today you're saying that doesn't jeopardize it. If the state comes back when they finalize, I guess, a formula and we need to do something to comply, then we're in a position to do that.
Correct. And it's more so what happens if the state comes back and says, hey, you know what, we know we were going to do it in 10, but we got to accelerate that because we just don't have the money to last out to the 10.
Right, those are all the unknowns, right.
Yeah, because they don't have anything approved for this year. That was the proposal, was the dropping it by the 115. I have not seen anything in my time or my dad's time where they did anything slower than that or than what they had for the formula changes, which were implemented 2 years ago. So,
but it's not approved, but it's been budgeted for. I mean, that's what's been budgeted for.
it's been budgeted, but they, what was that, 2 years ago? They did want to fast track it and move that to a 4-year term as opposed to the 10 years. So that has come up multiple times during budgeting season for the state where they change it after we've already approved a budget. So it creates all the uncertainty on our end because we don't, you know, we're going on a guesstimate and it could change wildly tomorrow.
Look, the state is already telegraphing they're going to do whatever they can to push their problems down onto towns. And how is that? Look at 7R. That's they're not concerning themselves, too much with what's going to happen to quote unquote rich municipalities and whatnot. They're already telegraphing their intentions as far as I'm concerned. But look, I'm one person and I'm just trying to avoid IOUs and I'm trying to avoid a real shock to the school system.
So
potential real shock.
Lynn, in regards to, so based on your assessment, then what is your recommendation in regards to the budget?
I'd like to make it $500,000. So I'd like to make that bucket with the understanding that that should they need all of it because they don't get the ECS, that it go back to the Board of Ed, that they find $500,000 to give us back this year, and if they can't, to reduce the budget by whatever the differential is, that other $150,000. But to,
So in that $500,000, so you're saying right now that you're kind of doing a line item, but you're saying they need to drop their general operations by $500,000?
But the money will be isolated in another line item.
So it's still part, but it doesn't that get into line item direction for the Board of Ed?
Transfers, you can do it anytime.
Line item transfer. It's just a line item transfer, which we can do whenever we want. So, or whenever they need it. Believe me, all I'm trying to do is help them. But if it's too complicated and nobody's getting it or doesn't agree, then I'm just throwing it out there.
So you're saying that 500 would be in the town budget then?
Well, it would be in the Board of Finance.
Operating budget.
It would be in the Board of Finance. Oh, okay, so it wouldn't be in the Board of Ed budget.
No, it would be in the Board of Finance budget because if we put it in their budget, it's in their budget. So we have no control over line items there, only on our own.
Okay, I see what you. Okay, all right.
Which is, Bob, that's how we did it in the past as well.
Where's Glenn Frischman? Do you understand?
I'm right here.
Do you get what I'm trying to do?
I absolutely understand it, and I think that that's very prudent. Take $500K out of the proposed operating, and then simultaneously set up a COVID-19 contingency to put in the return from the current operating fiscal, and then we can draw that down should we need to. Because I agree, the state's circling the drain faster than ever before. And I was on the board when the governor, in fact, I was watching the governor's meeting when he cited Stonington as a wealthy town that doesn't need any ECS. Then they were going to do 4 years, ultimately it merged to 10, but that was pre-COVID. And so those sentiments about our town and our demographics still exist in Hartford.
But those are different. It seems like that's a different thing. So Lynn, aren't you talking about the 350 that Alexa's talking about? And you're
I'm talking about jacking that to 500.
Right. So you're trying to incentivize her to come back with 500 instead of 350. But this isn't a contingency fund for if they lose their ECS funding.
Kind of it is, because they're coming back, they're handing us 350. Okay.
They're going to get that. They'll get that either way. I mean, aren't you saying they'll get that either way? As long as they show up with it, they're going to get it.
No, what I'm not as it stands right now. As it stands right now, they have found 350 to return to us. What I am asking is that they find 500 allow us to put it into, call it whatever bucket you want, COVID-19, that in fact, instead of it's going to our uses, unless there's some other crisis like a sewer plant fails or something that takes more priority than education, which would be hard to consider what that might be. But if that should occur, that we then can give it back to them however we see fit, depending upon the ECS funding that they get and the circumstances that the schools find themselves in. In other words, are they going to school for 9 months? And so on and so on. And do more edicts come out of the governor's office? That's all.
Hey, this is David. I just have a question. Is
who is this?
David Motherway. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dave Motherway. I know it's obviously Board of Ed is the largest bucket, and I support Lynn's recommendation to take that to 500K. The question I have is there an opportunity, or is it too late, to do this same thing for the rest of the budget, where where things that we don't have to spend, kind of going back to Member Frischman's point earlier, so we could, identify that now, put it line items in place, and have it for what we need. I'm not looking to recreate the wheel here, but
now.
I like Lynn's construct. I think it makes fiscal sense, and I think that if it's something that we can do and look at the other elements of the budget beyond just the Board of Ed, it would make sense.
So let me just jump in here for 1 second. The reason that the Board of Ed is unique and for this situation is that the Board of Finance has no line item transfer control over the Board of Ed budget, whereas the Board of Finance can control line item transfer for all of the town budget. So if monies were saved one place, they can be reallocated and repurposed all through the town general operating budget without a big issue. We can't change the bottom line once we give the Board of Ed a budget. We can't change the bottom line unless circumstances have changed, that like when we did in the past, ECS came in higher than we were anticipating, so we put money into their budget to comply with that. We can't go back and say, hey, ECS came in lower. Well, we can say that we're not going to give any more. You got to figure out where the delta is going to come out of, and in from. But that is why from the general government, it's a little easier for us to have oversight over everything and move the monies around to help spread around everything.
Mr. Chairman, you are exactly correct.
Mike, I just want to come back to Lynn to make sure I'm understanding, again, her proposal and think about this relative to what we did last year as well. But so Lynn, let's say we do set up that COVID line item, put 500,000 in there, and then let's say, for argument's sake, the ECS comes back. We find out 6 months from now that the ECS is fully funded at the same level. Let's keep this simple. At the same level it was funded in the current fiscal year. So no change year over year in the ECS. So what are you proposing we do at that point in time? Are we restoring the full 500,000 back to the Board of Ed once there's confirmation that in fact is the ECS number is what it is? It's flat relative to the prior year, and I think that I believe is kind of how we approached it last year.
That's basically my idea, without guaranteeing it, because hey, if there's bread lines and medical tents and nobody's got a job and we're not collecting tax receipts on the second installment either, then then it's a different ball game. Everybody's got to share the pain. But what I'm really trying to do, so my intention is not to hurt the Board of Ed. My intention is to help them in case this happens. So that's my intention, but I don't have a crystal ball either. I don't know, what else could happen to us or what other kind of funds we're going to have to expend beyond what we actually have. But that is my intention. That is my intention.
Yeah.
What's that? Can you not hear me? Hello?
I still hear you, Lynn.
Yes, I've got you.
Okay. Yeah, so Mike, that's my intent with that.
Lynn, hang on 1 second. If anyone is not talking or not a member of Board of Finance, can you mute yourself? Because we're getting some feedback here that's creating a problem. All right, Lynn, do you want to go ahead?
No, I think I answered that. I just don't know if anybody heard me.
Yeah, it's Mike, Lynn. I caught it. That was helpful. Thank you.
Okay. It's not a guarantee because, we don't know what else is going to happen to us, but that's the intention.
Mr. Chairman, can we get a sense of the board as to Member Young's proposal? I think that we've heard a lot of comment. Maybe you could sort of poll the members and see where we are.
Sure. So, Glenn, I'll start with you. What is your feeling on the proposal from
I
Lynn?
think we should do this. I think we should create a COVID-19 contingency, and that line would be funded out of the returns of the Board of Eds from their current fiscal year. Reduce that operating budget for the coming year by $500K with the proviso that we could repopulate that with their returns. That's basically what what Member Leon is proposing, because we don't know. We do know there is a dire financial state in Hartford, and I don't think it's going to get better quickly. So I think that prudence should carry the day.
And Mike, what do you think?
I still actually have one more. Yeah, this echo is a little crazy, but what guidance are we giving the Board of Ed in terms of they need to plan the next fiscal year? Essentially asking them to under the assumption that they're not getting the 100,000, or are we telling them that we're holding this, assuming everything goes smoothly at the state level, it'll be coming back on that basis. What guidance? Because if we're taking out
Mike, can you hang on 1 second? Glenn, can you push mute on your phone or something? I think we're getting feedback through you. Okay, Mike, you want to go with that again? Because I think we can hear a little better now.
Yeah, well, there still is a little bit of an echo, but okay, all right, there we go. What I'm unclear on with this proposal is what guidance we're truly giving the Board of Ed, because you take out another $500,000, there's certainly implications I would assume from a planning perspective, and makes me a little uneasy to put that forward without any sense for what the implications would be. What does that mean in terms of programming next year, et cetera? That makes me uncertain. So Lynn, what were you thinking the guidance would actually be to the Board of Ed?
I don't know how else to say other than what I've said, but I'll try it again. The guidance to the Board of Ed is, we hope. I'm getting horrible feedback. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's not as bad as before, but we're still getting the feedback, and I'm looking, try and figure out where it is coming from. We'll find it.
Okay. Maybe it's a little. So my thing is this: I'm trying to incentivize behavior, and I'm trying to mitigate a potential problem and look into the future, which I can't see clearly any more than anyone else can. And so I would like to make this bucket for the $500,000 by reducing their budget, which is what's going to help us keep the mill rate flat, putting it, in the budget, so it's an even swap. And if they don't get their ECS funding by that amount, and there's no other unforeseen catastrophes in town that could actually be worse than not funding education to the tune of the $37 million or $38 million, then they get it back. And if school winds up closed for 6 months out of the year, or other things happen, or whatever else, then we have the ability going forward to have a relatively small amount of money to fool with, to protect the cash flow, in the town, to make the payments to teachers, the administrators, police, and everybody else, just in case. But my expectation, and certainly my hope, would be that things are good enough that we just can hand it back to them. But they're going to have to plan for it in case we don't, because if they're smart, they have to plan for the fact they may not get the ECS or some significant chunk of it. You can't, I mean, just because, in the last budget pre-corona, governor said we're only taking 115, you can't, it's just, you can't plan for that as a certainty. So I'm trying to push that issue. That's all. My intention is to give it to them. My intention and my sincere hope is that none of this is necessary, but just in case it is, since we have no idea yet, that's it.
Okay, thank you. And I guess my other question, or I think we've got Alexa on the line, and there may be some others. I mean, I would be interested in a representative from the perspective on this. Do we still have anyone from the Board of Ed?
This is Alexa.
Go ahead, Alexa.
So in essence, we're giving back $350,000 to the town. So to help with cash flow and to help the town, all of our constituents, all of our citizens. And then you're asking us to cut our budget $500,000. $500,000. This would mean significant cuts in staffing, which, remember, unemployment is paid by us. We fund our unemployment. So that does not come from unemployment in the state. So that would also still have to be part of our budget. I would suggest perhaps that $350,000 and whatever else we can give back, you put in a fund to be used for the town. Keep our budget at the zero. We're giving the $350 back, hopefully more, where we continue to look at that. And then you have 400, maybe 350,000, maybe 400,000 to use towards this year's, the 2021 budget for whomever needs it.
Well, this year's budget is done, so budgets have beginning and end dates, but they all roll into the next one, which we usually don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about. So what I'm trying to tell, what are you going to do, Alexa, if you don't get that ECS funding? Because you can't come to us, we can't give it to you. You're not going to budget for that possibility?
Alexa, are you still there?
Yep, I had put it on mute, so I wasn't giving feedback. I think our district, the Board of Ed has shown that if a situation during the year changes, we make those cuts and reappropriate those funds as needed, and we will make those adjustments and we'll make those cuts if that's something that comes down the road to us.
Wouldn't you rather have us be able to mitigate that for you by, instead of just giving back to the town 350, you find a way to give us back 500 so we can give it to you if you need it?
The problem with that, Lynn, is that in that formula, the way that is, then we cannot use that to budget for this year's budget.
Well, yeah, you can, because all Gary does, by his own admission, is budget to the bottom line. He doesn't budget line items.
No, we budget to what the number is that we're given. You take $500,000 out of our budget, that's taken out of our budget. So that's reduced, and that's what we would go by.
But that doesn't make any sense if what you're telling me that you adjust for, changes in circumstances, like, if the ECS grants.
No, then we would make those cuts. Those items would be, things would be cut. The year of special education, we froze spending. We didn't utilize it for no field trips, no any extraneous costs. So we make those adjustments.
Yeah, you make them, but in this case, you might have to make them on the fly. And so if you take $500,000 out of your budget, out of a $38 million budget, at the 6-month interval, it makes absolutely no difference to you. And by the way, every year you manage to have large sums of money left over and whatnot. And so, this can be revisited at the midpoint when we have more clarity as to what the state can and cannot do. So I don't understand why you'd have to adjust a thing in your budget on day one.
You can't plan classrooms if you don't have a teacher there.
Why wouldn't you have a teacher? If you don't get the ECS funding, why? If you don't get the ECS,
you cut $500,000 from our budget.
It's not.
That's
Alexa, it's
a large number.
I understand that, but but you don't have to cut the teacher on day one because you have the money to pay that teacher on day one. So if things go okay, you get that $500,000 back. If they don't go okay and you don't get the ECS funding or any of it, you're cutting that teacher at 6 months into the school year. So I don't understand what the difference is. Why wouldn't you just budget? I don't understand the difference. And I grant you have an unbalanced budget, but I have no idea what your budget really looks like because I have absolutely no clarity into the line items and no transparency into that budget. I only know the whole number. So I still don't understand.
So you're saying that sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Lynn. I'm sorry.
No, I'm done.
Okay. So you're saying that $500,000 is still our money to keep in our budget?
No, it's in our budget. You would book it as a receivable. And as with all receivables, sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. But you would know, you wouldn't be making any adjustments for the first 6 months of the school year anyway, because $500,000 isn't going to make a bit of difference to that. Right? So by 6 months into the next fiscal, we all ought to have a whole lot better idea what's going to happen. So, if you don't get, what you're not considering here is it's no different than if you don't get that ECS funding, and that ECS funding is a much bigger number.
And if I can jump in, I'm sorry, Alexa, it's Deb Norman. You mentioned that if you didn't get the ECS funding, you figured sort of that out if you don't get it. Did I misunderstand that? That you have money in your budget to cover that in case it doesn't come through?
No, we do not have money in our budget to cover it. We don't have an excess of $500,000 in our budget. What happens is if we don't get that, then we would take a look back at what there is, and then we would make those cuts accordingly.
Right, but none of that do you have to do in the first 6 months because you'll have plenty of money. Whether we took 5 million or 500,000, so it's the back half that's the issue. But that's where we're going to know. Presumably, we'll have a much better sense of where things are going to go. I don't really see it as any different than any other receivable, including the ECS, for what you would have. And I'm trying to make you guys think about this because it's not only possible, it's likely you're going to get a pretty hefty haircut.
Yeah, I guess, yes, Mike again. Oops, I'm muted. So what I guess, yeah, I mean, it's an unknown, right, Lynn? I mean, we just simply don't know. I mean, the state's obviously going to have trouble. Is it going to go out and try and borrow more money? I guess it's impossible to predict, but.
But you can look at sort of the handwriting and try to make a best guess, just like you would if you were trying to invest in a stock or something, right? It's a risk analysis. And so I'm trying to, I'll just say one more time, I'm trying to do a couple of things here. One is to really incentivize you. I know that you would prefer, everyone always prefers to be given a number to drive to. No one likes to make the first offer and whatnot, and to be given a number to drive to. And what I'm trying to get you to do is the 350. I saw an email and it was plunking 100 grand from this and 150 grand from that and 100 grand from this. It's always these round numbers. I don't get the sense that the Board of Ed has done what the town has done, which is to literally go count staples. So I'm trying to encourage you to do that, because for every staple you count, when next year we can give you the help that you really may need.
So I guess there are two different ways to do this. One is take it out now and then have an insurance program, in effect, a self-funded insurance program. And the other is to let it ride and see what the state comes back with, and just know that that's not going to get funded by the town. We don't have the undesignated fund balance the way we have in the past to account for if we lose all the ECS. Just not going to happen. So,
Tim, it's Deb. When did you find out last year when the ECS came in?
Jim, what did we find out? July, August? It might have even been October.
Okay.
That was 2 years ago was when they were, last year was easier. I think it was by July of last year, we knew. But 2 years ago, it dragged and dragged and dragged, and we really didn't know what we were going to get until very late in the year. So
yeah, part of the reason, Tim, explain the reason, which was back when they did that biennial, whatever they call it, budget, it looked like they were like 2 to 4 billion in the hole for both years. Okay. And then they got a whole influx of tax receipts for one reason and one reason only, and that was the Trump tax changes. So that's where the rainy day fund came from. That's where all this largesse back to the ECS and all the rest of it came from. That was unpredictable. But this situation is worse than where they were 2 years ago. Much worse. It's much worse than 2008, and it is much worse than any place they have ever been with this budget. That is known. And that's what the history behind that whole ECS, cuts and all the rest of it were, and why it took so long. You might remember that that was the budget year that took them forever to adopt the budget.
Right.
So that's what, so you can't, and look, the state, I mean, it's a rock and a hard spot here, right? If the state doesn't have the money and its choice is to issue IOUs to state employees or to cut ECS funding, pick your poison. What do you think they're going to do?
Yeah. So we can kind of try and budget now. I mean, I think we've talked this to death, or we can go down. Glenn, you gave me your sense of where you're at. Mike, where are you leaning now? Are you thinking we ought to kind of self-insure or let it roll?
My choice is to flatline the budget minus the last known communication, the 115,000. So I'd suggest 37,901, 100 minus 115,000. And I'm just afraid we're going to put them into the Board of Ed into a potential tailspin, and I just worry about that. So and the impacts that would have on planning for programming next year. That's where I'm at.
Lynn, I think I know where you're at because it was your proposal. Deb,
yeah, it's also one thing about that, Mike. That means that the 350 grand that gets returned to us stays with us. That's an upside down trade, and I'd love to have a trading partner on the other side for something like that, but that's what it means.
Yeah, and that's a good position for the town, right? Get that 350.
Yeah, which is why I keep saying I'm trying to help the Board of Ed.
Yeah, that's what I'm struggling with that one too. Of why give back 350? I get it, but why to save for the long term? Because I can't imagine the ECS coming through. I really am kind of scared about that one. Sorry, just my thoughts.
Bob, what are your thoughts? Where are you at right now?
Are you allowed to check in these meetings? Can I? I'm using a poker term. But I guess I'll make my bet. Yeah. No. Yeah, I'm passing to you there, Dave. Let me. I think that the concerns on the ECS are going to be contemplated. They should be contemplated by the Board of Ed in their budgeting process. I mean, they're going to have to deal with that one way or the other. I think I'm more prone at this point in the game to go with Mike's suggestion as far as the the 150. I could, again, I had thrown out there reducing it by 59 so that we have a 0 mill rate increase. I think there's psychological benefit as much as anything, but I could also support the asking them to reduce their budget by 115. I think at this point, telling them their budget is going to be $500,000 less, but it might not be, I think that at this point in the process, I think it's of concern. It seems like a unique budgeting process. It's a year when this will not go to the voters. We have to keep in mind as well, this is going to go to the Board of Selectwomen, who are going to be making this decision rather than the voters. And so to go in and make this cut at this point in the budgeting process, I probably would be, I think I'm more comfortable with the approach of trying to have the 0 mill rate increase or the 0.2 decrease as contemplated by Mike. I also wonder if, well, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Dave, where are you at?
In very simplest terms, how I look at it is if they're going to return $350,000 to us, then we should look at zero-based budget for next year. Their budget next year should be reduced by that $350K. And I, based on the round numbers and lack of clarity, support Lynn's goal of the $500K and reducing their budget and putting that into the line item as she described. And from my understanding, only been in the town for 5 years, but the trend has been that there's been, either things purchased or extra money on a recurring basis, and we should just take advantage of that now when we can, because we should.
So, Deb, I guess I got to get you to kind of clarify. I know
Yeah, sorry, I did learning on the fly. So one quick question for Alexa. You said that there's going to be, you're still looking at your numbers besides the 350? Is that correct?
We are still in negotiations with First and some other pieces because we were asked to go back and look at to see if we could return some money to the town so that we could help with cash flow during the summer months. So that's what we've been doing as much as possible, narrowing and nailing things down. We could guarantee 350, and so that's why we only wanted to come forward with the number we knew we could guarantee. But we're looking at certainly more savings because of the schools being on unoccupied mode, the negotiations with First Student. But there still are costs, that are occurring for our schools. But the idea of the 115 is certainly much better than the 500. The thought was, if we gave the 350 back, that we were giving that back to the town because our town needs it now, and they need that cash flow during that first quarter.
Okay.
If that helps your thinking.
Yeah.
And
So
remember, we were also talking about this next coming year. We were going to be looking at our classrooms, looking at how we're going to be addressing the downsizing in the schools, the smaller enrollment numbers. And so with that will come some savings as well. So we'll be prepared for next year to help with some savings. But to take 500 out of our budget now would be devastating to the schools.
Okay. I do tend to lean a little bit more towards Lynn, but not at the full 500. I'd like to have you guys Board of Ed, come up with more of a concise number. But again, if I'm being clear, is that it's not money coming back directly to us that was going to go into a savings for the school or not the COVID line, quote unquote. Is that still correct? That's the idea.
That's exactly correct.
Okay. All right. So it's not like we're putting it away for some bad times that we know are coming. So I'm going to vote with Lynn and David.
Okay. And so in news that just came out, in 2 months, the state has gotten over 350,000 unemployment claims, which equals 2 years worth of claims in normal times. We're in abnormal times. I would be supportive of Lynn's 500. I think that we need to be thinking that the state isn't going to come with anything but pushing more things down onto us that we're going to have to come up with monies for that they're not going to fund. So I would like to add the line item for the 500, take that out of the operating as an insurance kind of program, self-insurance, and go from there, because I don't think that anything is normal these days. UConn is looking at not having students living on campus in the fall already. You know, we're not in normal times, so I'd rather we insure and try and move things in a positive direction to mitigate as much as what the state uncertainty is going to have. And I'd like nothing better than to come back and move that money right over into the Board of Education. I really would. That would be a pleasant surprise.
Can I ask a question? Have we ever used this procedure before?
Not this specific one. Well, yeah. The only difference being in that the procedure we used before was we used undesignated fund balance, and we put that in as the placeholder there, and then we're able to return that to the fund balance when it came in some or all of it. In most cases, we were not able to move all of it back in, but we did have some that came back because the cuts were more. So procedurally, yes, we have used this in the past, but they were a little better defined times than they are right now. Not much, but definitely a little bit better. And I think, so from a procedure standpoint, this has been used in the past.
I know everyone's tired of hearing me talk, but can I say one more thing? How long have I been here? 2 years? In my 2 years on this thing, one thing that I've observed is that we don't really make an effort to do anything other than budget for the current year. And this is, in my opinion, like not the best and smartest way to go. This is a very beginning step at trying to look into the future and just be just a tiny bit smarter.
So going down the look, it looks like we have 5 members that are supportive of Lynn's proposal. Deb with the one who would like to see something different than the 500 potentially. I think 500 is kind of not a bad number based on what our ECS risk is. So I would be supportive of the 500. And I just want to kind of get a sense from Glenn and Lynn and Dave and Deb.
This is Alexa. Can I add anything? If we have $500,000 cut, we will probably have to lay off about 10 teachers. I just want to add that in.
Well,
start with the administrator at the Mystic Middle School.
Well, let me say something too, and I think Lynn's point is correct. Right now, the school Board of Ed is finding $350,000 to return to the town, and that number could grow, and we're hoping it does. That being said, if there's no ECS, you know, you kind of have to do a dance around the whole thing, because if the ECS gets cut, you're going to lose those people no matter what. That's the reality. But if we can put in this and budget around some worse times, and it doesn't have to happen at the immediacy of it, we can see how this plays out. We can get a little more clarity from the state. We can see how, if if we're getting tax bases paid or not, we can easily move that back in, and it's easier to do that than it is try and figure out where you're going to cut mid-year to come up with $500,000, in my opinion. So that's why I'm supportive of it. And I think what's at risk, personally, I think it's around $500,000. So Glenn, how are you feeling on that number of the $500,000?
I think $500,000 is the right number.
Lynn, it was your proposal, so I'm going to think you're okay. Dave, another way.
Yeah, it's something less than 1.3%. I think the 500,000 is the right number.
And I support it. Deb, you okay with the 500 now?
Yeah, it's just when I heard the word, it's devastating, and that makes me nervous. So, yeah, I will. I'll back it.
We got 350,000 people in Connecticut who would say this COVID-19 is devastating to them as well.
I agree.
Just trying to make sure we're as fiscally prudent for the taxpayers who are going through an awful hard time. You heard earlier what Leanne was saying about the amount of people that are getting food, and that I think it's already starting to be felt. It's not necessarily being seen as widely yet.
Correct. And also it's being saved. It's not like it's money that's not going back to them.
If things turn better, then it all goes right back in. And if things get worse, we're budgeting around and we got some insurance. So, it's a hedging of bets, if you will, for what's to come. And I think it's a less risky maneuver.
Can I ask a question? So if we're going to take 500,000 out of their budget and move it over to this new line item, we still haven't dealt with the issue of the 59,000 to bring to a 0 mil increase. So if we keep that number the same, we're still at the 0.02% increase in the mill rate. Is that the direction we're going?
That was going to be my next question.
I'm sorry, I don't know what I did, but I could see Tim talking. I couldn't hear anything. What did you say?
Bob was
very good point. I made a very good point, Lynn.
Bob was asking that right now we're still 0.02% increase on the mill rate. If we take the 500 and put an offset account, we haven't addressed that 0.02, the 50,000 there that would make it a net 0 mill increase.
One of the things we stuck back in there, there was one thing for, what is it? It was the tennis courts, the 65 grand.
Tennis courts. We added 65 grand in there for the tennis courts.
Well, personally, I think that those tennis courts, depending on what they discover, could wind up being, 600 grand to $1 million to really redo them. I would try to get to the 0 mil by, putting 15 or whatever in there on top of the 150, because I think that's more of a bondable thing to me. With, because interest rates are going to be really, really low for a really long time, if it gets bad enough, negative. So I think, there's other stuff in town that,
Your proposal, Lynn, I'll summarize it, is to take line 77 and change it by whatever we are above a 0 mil increase, decrease line 77 by that exact amount.
Or whatever, take 50 grand, because then it's a rounding error.
Yeah.
I think.
How do members feel about Glenn? How about changing down line 77 by $50,000?
You're going to take 50 out of the tennis courts and the balance out of these, yes?
Well, that would be it would be probably in lieu of the ECS, because we've already taken their operating down by 500.
Okay.
Mike,
I was taking out the added that we put in for the tennis courts, the 150 plus a little bit stays.
Yeah, we're not taking it down to 0. We're just taking it down to a less of an increase. Mike, how's that for you?
Well, I'm still fuzzy on, we're proposing then that we were going to ultimately bond for this. I am worried about what we're setting up for ourselves, for the future. If we aren't funding, this, well, I mean, we're funding it, but if we aren't putting a more substantial amount here in next year, it's an even bigger hurdle, right, for the following year. And I think we would all agree that we're not out of the woods the next fiscal year. So is the proposal to eventually bond for all this, or what's the actual proposal?
Well, the proposal from my point of view is to hope that I am dead wrong about everything I've said. But if not, and it's as bad as I think it is, money's going to be free. So I think we don't really know what that thing is going to cost, but having had tennis courts myself, I know what one costs. So I'm worried that it's a big enough number that it's going to have to be rolled into a bond with some other stuff anyway. That's all. Because the 300 grand, I don't understand how you're going to rip up 6 tennis courts and fix it for real. So we're not dealing with the problem anyway, whether we put 65 in it this year and next year or not. So.
Well, 600,000 is the estimated cost, not 300.
Right. So we have out years anyway, and 600 is estimated to rip them up and redo them all for Hartrude courts.
Yeah.
Wow. Then I either got ripped off or we will soon. Okay.
Can we ask Leanne about this? Because I know she knows a lot about it.
Yes, I'm here. It's $100,000 per court, just to clarify, and that's with ripping up what's currently there and installing the post-tension concrete system underneath and resurfacing. So that covers the entire court facility for that total of $600,000. We had initially added in an extra $25,000 in the beginning to cover the cost of the Band-Aid repairs, if you will, for the next year and a half, but we have pulled that back and we'll be covering those costs with our own program revenue.
Okay, it's Mike again. And am I correct, Jim or Tim, that the adjustment would still, if we make this adjustment, we're still going to be at least at the level in the originally proposed budget, maybe even a few thousand more? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, not really, because 300,000 was proposed because 150 was proposed through Human Services and 150 was proposed through Board of Ed. So 300,000 was originally proposed for this current fiscal year.
Yeah, but in the budget book we have, we're still ahead.
We're still ahead than what we went to the public with, correct?
Right. Yes. All right.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. Okay. All right, well, I mean, I do feel it's important that we have a flat mill rate. So if we want to use this as the plug and we're still above where we were in the budget book, I'll support it. Yeah.
Lynn, that was your idea. So
yeah.
Deb, Norman?
Yeah, I support it.
Bob?
So, and Mike, just to clarify then, are you also supporting the 500,000?
No, I'm not supporting.
Mike is not,
I mean,
but
they're kind of a package deal. I mean, if we don't do if we do the 500, then that creates that different. I mean, again, I support getting down to a 0 mill rate, but I want to. So I support that idea of getting to a 0 mill rate. The idea of if we did this, I mean, Alexa had said she was, they probably could swallow taking the 115 out of their budget. She's more concerned with the 500. So if we were going to take the 115 out like we had originally talked about, then we wouldn't have to do this with the tennis program, which again is sort of one of the shining stars of the town. So I see them as sort of linked. If we're already cutting them by the 500, then we're kind of, then we do have to, and we're going to create this $500,000 line. The only difference would be then creating a $450,000 line. And then that would again get us to the 0. But Mike, do you see those as
well, let me interject something here, because what Lynn was talking about was having an offset of 500 out of operating budget, 500 into Board of Finance budget. So net 0 effect on the mill rate or overall budget.
Correct.
And so that doesn't get us down to 0% mill rate by that one move.
Right. So you have to package that with taking out the tennis courts. The tennis court line. So it's a package deal. So that's why I'm asking Mike, or if we don't do the $500,000 deal, then it becomes a question of, do we get the school board to go to the 115 or do we take out the 65? In that case, so if it's.
Yeah, but Bob,
yep.
We have the votes for the 500,000. That's going to happen. Okay. The votes are there.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was assuming, Bob, is that we'd lost that that vote. So assuming that's already happened, right? That the 500,000 is going to move. It's a net neutral impact on the mill rate. Now what I'm saying is, under that assumption that, right, or that, not assumption, I mean, that's a reality, right? That it sounds like the vote was 5-2 on that. I still feel it's important to get to a flat mill rate, and that I feel like we need to find another, whatever it is, 55,000 to get to a flat mill rate. And I was okay using the tennis courts. Again, recognizing that it's actually the numbers for that is still going to be higher than what we had in the original budget book. But I hear what you're saying. I mean, yeah, I just don't think we can reopen the other argument.
I mean, I mean, with the other argument, we get the tennis courts and we get them to reduce their budget by 115. I mean,
Well, but we've already, that vote has happened, that ship has sailed. So we're not going to keep going back to it. I hate to say it, but now we're just looking at the tennis courts to try and make up the 50 to get to a net neutral mill rate.
but in the end, we're not asking then the Board of Education's not, this year won't have to reduce their budget at all. They won't have to, they won't have to do that 115 cut, because if they get the 500, then we haven't, which, okay. All right. Okay.
So you're okay with the 50 out of the tennis court?
I mean, yes.
Okay. Dave Motherway?
I support the reduction to the tennis court.
Okay, Jim, can you go to the SIP line 77 and remove 50,000 from that line, please?
It's 56,000 in a round number.
56,000 then, please, Jim.
Right. So that'll leave a $9,000 increase over the 150. So leaving a balance of 159,000 left in the budget.
That's, okay.
That's all set.
And then can you create a line in the finance department? Gotta get to for the 500?
Yep.
Okay, and then can you do a subsequent offset in the Board of Ed operating budget?
Done.
Where are we at with, can you give us totals and mill rate, please?
Okay, the mill rate is 23.36, same as last year.
And can you go through general government and everything, please?
Yep. General government is 23,625,749. Education is $37,401,100. Debt service is $8,082,815. Capital improvements are $2,438,631. A total of $71,548,295.
And that's a net no mill increase. The 23.36 is the same as it was last year.
Correct.
Glenn, how do you feel about this? Would you like to continue discussions?
I am satisfied that we should move the budget and send it to the selectmen for either ratification, or they can send it back to us and we'll make further cuts.
Mike Fauerbach?
Right. I mean, as long as the prior matter was, the vote was properly recorded. I'm not going to reopen the discussion on that. But yeah, so based on that, we have to move forward. So I'm the flat mill rate proposal. Yeah.
Lynn?
I'm good.
Deb Norman?
Yes.
Are you good with the budget as presented?
Yep.
Okay. Bob?
Again, Mike, going back to are you voting to move the budget forward, or are you voting in favor of the budget?
Right now, I'm just trying to make sure people don't want to keep discussing the budget and deliberating about it, and then we'll get a formal motion to move it forward and see how everyone's voting. Right now, because we're virtual, I'm trying to do it that way.
Yeah, no, I'm not looking to debate the budget any further at this juncture. I guess if that answers your question, Bob.
Yeah, and I concur, and I'm not either.
Dave Motherway?
No further discussion needed for me.
Okay. Jim, just check that these numbers are right, okay? Can I get a motion to send a budget of 23 for general government, $23,625,749. Education, $37,401,100. Debt services, $8,082,815, and capital improvement of $2,438,631 for a total budget for the town of Stonington of $71,548,295.
Those numbers are all correct, Tim.
And a mill rate of 23.36. Can I get a motion to send for that?
So moved.
Thank you, Lynn. Is there a second from Deb Norman?
Yep.
Okay. Motion, Lynn. Second for Deb Norman. Is there any further discussion for the budget? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Please identify yourself to me. Hearing none, the motion. Go ahead, Mike. Did you have something?
Yeah, we got our echo again. I don't know, Glenn. I think, Glenn, it might be on your end if you could mute. I oppose based on the fact that I think we've got 500,000 or 500,000 heavy in general government and 500,000 light in education. I support the total budget of 71,548,295, but the subtotals are where my concern is.
So you're going to be listed as a no vote because I can't qualify votes. It's either yay or nay. So would you like to vote nay or yay?
I will vote nay on that basis.
Okay.
And I will, I guess I think it's a unique year. I had anticipated, based on our caucus and our prior discussions, that we would be able to send the Board of Selectwomen a unanimous budget. So I regret that we're not in a position to do that. Again, I agree with the final number, but I don't agree that at this point to switch the funds in that way is timely. So I'll join Mike Fauerbeck in voting against it.
Okay, so based on the vote, we have 5 yays, 2 nays, so the motion carries. All right.
Thank you, Tim.
The one final thing, I will make a note. This doesn't pertain to the budget, but we will have our May meeting. We have a couple line item transfers and things that we have to approve for that. And for those of everyone who's still involved, the next part of the process on May 12th of this year, we will have a joint meeting with the Board of Selectwomen and the Board of Finance to present the budget for vote and potential ratification. So that will be happening at 4 o'clock on May 12th and will be noticed in the newspapers. Is there anything else? Well, we can't do anything because it's a special meeting and we don't have anything on the agenda. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Can I Tim, just jump in. I just want to comment, or maybe as we were kind of running through things there quickly, I was trying to jump in just on Bob's point. I just want to clarify that I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing or an unhealthy thing that we've got different views, different opinions, and I think that's what challenges us. It results in hopefully the best outcome possible in terms of different perspective, different ideas. So. I'm not troubled personally, and that we're not necessarily unanimous in the view. I think it's indicative of us working hard and thinking through lots of different ideas and possibilities. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thanks, Tim.
I appreciate that, Mike.
I want to say one thing if I could, Tim.
Go ahead.
Before we adjourn, and then this is actually directed to Joe Wojcicki if he's on the phone. I want to make sure he understands what we did, which was not a cut to education. It's an offset that we fully intend and hope and pray we provide. That's all.
I'll open it up if anyone else wants to say anything. Hearing nothing, I will go. Oh, go ahead. Was that Jim?
No, not me.
Okay. Is it Dave?
Not me.
Okay. The one thing I will say is this is a very challenging time. I appreciate, I will echo Mike's comments. I'm glad that we have the group that we have that doesn't always agree, that we actually challenge each other. And it has been a very tough process. I hope all of you who are new to this process, I've never seen one like this in that we have so many uncertainties going forward, but I think everyone had the best interest of the town first and foremost in their mind, and are trying to make assumptions based on something this nation hasn't seen in 100 years. So I thank you for all of that, for all of your efforts and time that we've put into this. And I will like a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved. Lynn.
Mike.
Mike with a second. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.